All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are starting chapter 2. So our first one, and I have this broken up into a couple of days, but if you're watching these videos virtually, know that you will likely be getting through like day 1 and day 2 all within the same block schedule time frame. So just be mindful of that. So for today, for the start of this, we're looking at percentiles and cumulative frequency plots. So there is a where do I stand activity that I might recommend doing for those of you that are doing this at home. These activities usually are ones that you can be doing on your own, or you can look at my key and at least review what you would have covered if you were doing this in class. I think the where do I stand activity is pretty important because it really explicitly walks you through how we calculate cumulative frequency and really starts the conversation around percentiles. So I at least recommend looking at the key if you don't do the actual activity itself. There's nothing on the activity that you would need to gather data from like we would be doing in class. So just a little bit on that. All right, but moving on to the actual formal notes here, the definition of percentile is, there we go, the value with p% of observations less than it. So, for example, when my last son Jackson was born, he was in the 98th percentile, meaning 98% of babies are way less than him. So his weight put him in the 98th percentile because he was a really big baby. You often hear this language when you're at the doctor's office, and they'll take your height and your weight and your gender, and they might do a couple of other things, and they'll say, well, overall you are at maybe the 60th percentile. And that means if you were to compare all the people with your same gender and height range, that percentage of people are smaller than you in terms of weight, and then you're at that value. How we create cumulative relative frequency plots. So on this part, I just want to sketch just in general what cumulative relative frequency plots tell us. So the y-axis here is the actual cumulative frequency. We always start at 0 at the bottom, and at the very top it's always 1 because it's cumulative. So that means if we take all of our data sets and continue to build and add onto them and stack those numbers on top, once we get to the end of our data set, we'll be at 100% or we'll be at 1. So that's why it always starts at 0 and ends at 1. And then our data values are the x-axis. And then there's usually like several points in here. And the last point is always at the very top. So you'll notice that with the cumulative relative frequency plots, it's not like a consistent linear increase or curve. There's several data points that we then link these lines to, and so it's very pieced together. Something to keep in mind is that we are always dealing with or talking about percentages. If you're given a cumulative relative frequency plot, you can actually find your interquartile range or your median or your Q1 or Q3. Q1 is always at the 25th percentile mark. The median or Q2 is at the 50th percentile mark, and Q3 is at the 75th percentile mark. So just some things to keep in mind. All right, watch the next video for the next set of notes for 2.1.